Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bookish Babbles, the podcast where we reread our favorite books and chat about them. I'm your host, Alyson, and without further ado, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 31 of Bookish Babbles. Today we are talking about chapters 22 to 24 of Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. Woo! We got this, and then one more episode about Catching Fire, then we start all our wrap-up and fun stuff. Also be on the lookout for bonus episodes and stuff, because, still working on that. I'm really good at this, guys. Yeah, I don't have too much going on. The weather's getting colder. I have a new flannel. Still working. Just life. Oh, and I'm very into Anne of Green Gables right now, which is the perfect time because it's October. But anyway, yeah, I don't have much going on this week, so I guess we'll just dive into the episode. No more beating around the bush. Okay, so last week, Katniss and Peeta wind up in an alliance with Phoenix with Finnick and Mags. Mags dies after they're attacked by poisonous fog, and a killer monkey almost gets Peeta, but the female morphling from District 6 saves his life. This week, Katniss and Peeta join an even bigger alliance. Plot twist, the arena is a clock, and even more death happens. What do you know? So, with all that being said, let's dive into chapter 22. Okay, so we pick up right where we left off. The woman from 6 jumped out, putting herself between Peeta and the killer monkey, which predictably results in a fatal wound. Peeta repeatedly stabs the monkey until it falls off the woman. The group is ready to keep fighting, but for some reason the monkeys start withdrawing back to the jungle. Still, Finnick and Katniss keep their weapons ready while Peeta picks up the morphling and carries her the rest of the way to the beach. And from just one look at her wounds, it's clear that nothing can be done to save her life. Nothing they can do now but stay with her while she dies. And there's a really sad passage starting at the bottom of page 311 that kind of perfectly represents how sad the unnamed morphling's life was. She lies on the sand, gasping like a fish out of water, sagging skin, sickly green. Her ribs as prominent as a child's dead of starvation. Surely she could have afforded food, but turned to morphling just as Haymitch turned to drink, I guess. Everything about her speaks of waste. Her body, her life, the vacant look in her eyes. I hold one of her twitching hands, unclear whether it moves from the poison that affected our nerves, the shock of the attack, or withdrawal from the drugs that was her sustenance. There's nothing we can do now. Nothing but stay with her while she dies. And then Peeta does what Peeta does best, and that's comforting people and caring for them. And also seeming to know what they need, because he knows exactly what will comfort the morphling in her final moments. So Peeta starts talking about his paint set back home. He talks about how the different colors are in his paint box, and this seems to work since the morphling is hanging on to his every word. Peeta then recounts the time he spent 3 days mixing paint to get the right shade for sunlight on white fur. And he can't quite get a hold of painting a rainbow just yet, since they don't last long enough for him to study. And as she's completely entranced by Peeta's words, the morphling paints a flower on Peeta's cheek, and then she dies. But she at least gets one moment of joy when Peeta compliments her painting, and it's so sad that we never learn her name. Anyway, Peeta carries the morphling's body out to the water, and she floats out until the hovercraft comes to collect her body. Then Finnick rejoins them, having collected a bunch of Katniss's arrows, and he says there were no signs of the monkeys, so it's safe to try and get water again. And since it's still dark out, they try and get some more rest. Finnick volunteers to take watch, and Katniss lets him, realizing that he needs some privacy to mourn Mags, because that was barely an hour ago. Katniss reflects on how much her dynamic with Finnick has changed, because just the previous morning, Finnick was on her kill list, and now Katniss doesn't hesitate to let Finnick stand guard while she sleeps. I mean, hard not to think highly of him after he saved Peeta's life multiple times, even let Mags go into the fogs to get Peeta to safety. Katniss sleeps until mid-morning, and Peeta is still out cold next to her, and Finnick is kept busy while they slept, since there's a grat mat suspended over them to protect them from the sun. Finnick also made two baskets for water and another filled with shellfish. Katniss then goes to wash herself in the water since she has been scratching herself in her sleep and the scabs are now bloody. And she then, out loud asks Haymitch to send them something for their scabs, and it actually works, because he does send her something. And the medicine instantly makes her skin feel better, but according to Finnick, it looks like they're decomposing. And this is the conversation they have. It's great. It's on page 316. Katniss: poor Finnick. Is this the first time in your life you haven't looked pretty? Finnick: it must be. The sensation's completely new. How have you managed all these years? Katniss: just avoid mirrors. You'll forget about it. Finnick: not if I keep looking at you. And then they decide to have a little fun by playing a practical joke on Peeta. And this is still on page 316. So Katniss says, I'm going to wake Peeta. No, wait, says Finnick. Let's do it together. Put our faces right in front of his. Well, there's so little opportunity for fun left in my life, I agree. We position ourselves on either side of Peeta, lean over until our faces are inches from his nose, and give him a shake. Peeta, Peeta, wake up, I say in a soft sing-song voice. His eyelids flutter open and he jumps like we stabbed him. Ah! Finnick and I fall back in the sand, laughing our heads off. Every time we try to stop, we look at Peeta's attempt to maintain a disdainful expression, and it sets us off again. By the time we pull ourselves together, I'm thinking that maybe Finnick Odair is all right. At least not as vain or self-important as I thought. Not so bad at all, really. And just as I've come to this conclusion, a parachute lands next to us with a fresh loaf of bread. Remembering from last year how Haymitch's gifts are often timed to send a message, I make a note to myself: be friends with Finnick, you'll get food. So Finnick takes the bread, and Katniss notices that it's in a kind of possessive way, which is a bit weird, but Katniss brushes it off by assuming that it's bread from home and, makes him think of Mags. And for a while they hang out on the beach, not very eager to go back into the jungle, where obviously a lot of dangers are. Eventually they hear some screaming, because, everything was getting a little too quiet. Can't have that in the Hunger Games. Then a giant wave comes out of nowhere and thankfully stops on the other side of the water from where Katniss and crew are, though that doesn't stop some water from coming up to their knees. And between the three of them, they're able to save their stuff from floating away. And just as they settle down, Katniss sees three figures emerge out of the jungle. At a glance, Katniss can tell that they're in bad shape. One has to be carried by the other, and the third is just kind of going in circles, and they look like they're covered in red paint. Who is this trio, you may ask? Joanna, Wyrus, and Veedy. Finnick's the one who recognizes them and runs over calling Joanna's name. And just like that, Katniss and Peeta now have more allies. I love how Katniss starts off every Hunger Games determined to go alone, or in this case, with just Peeta, but always ends up with more friends than she bargains for. As an introvert, I can confirm this is exactly how I end up in most friend groups. I get close with one or two people, and at least one of them's an extrovert, and before I know it, I get roped into hanging out with a whole group, and by the time I've realized what's happened, it's too late. I'm already in deep with the friendship with that one particular person. Anyway, When they get close, we learn why they're covered in the red stuff. It's not paint, it's blood. Because they were wandering in the jungle and it started raining, and they were excited because they thought, "Yay! Finally have some water to drink." But surprise, it wasn't rain. It was blood, because not the kind of surprise they wanted, obviously. And while they were wandering in the blood rain, practically blind, Blight, who was Joanna's district partner, hit the force field, and unlike PETA, there was no way to help him, so he died. And it was definitely hard for Joanna, because, Blight was someone from home, a fellow victor, and probably one of the only people Joanna talked to, though she won't admit it. And the most we get from her is when, like she says in regard to Blight, he wasn't much, but he was from home. And he left her alone to look after Wyrus and Beatty up until now, because, met up with this trio. And kind of quick side note, so going back to the whole, like, Joanna knowing Blight and them being kind of friends. So we know that, from what she says later on, that everyone she loves is gone, because, that's what Snow does to victors. If they do something he doesn't like, he kills their loved ones. And Blight was probably one of the few people Joanna felt comfortable talking to back home, since it's unlikely Snow would kill him off if Joanna did something wrong, because, Blight's also a victor. But anyway, just another sad thought, because, no one in this series is allowed to be happy. Okay, so apparently Beatty got a literal knife in the back during the bloodbath, because he was trying to get a coil of wires. As for Wyrus, she is currently going in circles saying tick tock all over again. Insert some joke about cursed clock app here, but I can't think of a good one, so we're moving on from that. Joanna's run out of patience with Wyrus and is very sick of her saying TikTok, over and over again, and ends up pushing Wyrus and telling her to stay down. This triggers Katniss yelling at Joanna to, leave Wyrus alone, which is kind of the last straw for Joanna, I guess. She starts yelling and cursing at Katniss. She starts to say, like, she got Wyrus and Beatty out of the jungle for Katniss, and Finnick cuts her off by picking Joanna up and repeatedly dunking her in the water, and Joanna still cursing at Katniss every time she comes up for air. Though Katniss is a little bit confused now. After all, why would Joanna rescue Beatty and Wyrus for her? No time to dwell on that, gotta tend to Beatty's wounds, and to do so they have to strip his jumpsuit off, though Katniss handles this much better than she did when she had to heal PETA and strip his clothes off, since in the past year her kitchen table has seen so many naked men, she's numb to it now. Okay, then Katniss finds the leaf moss stuff in the jungle that Mags gave her earlier to blow her nose, and it seems to help. After making sure that Beatty's taken care of, Katniss checks on Wyrus, who's just, chilling in the water, probably having the best time out of everyone in the group. She helped Wyrus start to clean up, and the whole time Wyrus is telling her TikTok like she's urgently trying to tell Katniss something, but without Beatty there to be the interpreter, Katniss is at a loss for what's going on. Finnick gets everyone up to speed on what's been happening on their end. The fog, monkeys, Mags. Katniss and Joanna stay up and guard while everyone sleeps. Joanna asks what happens to Mags, and Katniss explains. And there's just a couple pages left, so I'll just read from there to the end of the chapter, since Katniss has a pretty important revelation at the end of it. So it starts with Joanna asking, "How'd you lose Mags?" "In the fog. Finnick had PETA, I had Mags for a while, then I couldn't lift her. Finnick said he couldn't take them both. She kissed him and walked right into the poison," I say. "She was Finnick's mentor, Joanna says accusingly. "No, I didn't," I say. "She was half his family," she says a few moments later, but there was less venom behind it. We watch the water lap up over the undergarments. "So, what were you doing with nuts and bolts?" I ask. "I told you, I got them for you. Haymitch said if we were to be allies, I had to bring them to you," says Joanna. "That's what you told him, right?" "No, I think, but I nod my head in assent. Thanks, I appreciate it." I hope so. She gives me a look filled with loathing, like I'm the biggest drag possible in her life. I wonder if this is what it's like to have an older sister who really hates you. Tick tock, I hear behind me. I turn and see Wyrus has crawled over. Her eyes are focused on the jungle. Oh, good, she's back. Okay, I'm going to sleep. You and Nuts can guard together, Joanna says. She goes over and flings herself down beside Finnick. Tick tock, whispers Wyrus. I guide her in front of me and get her to lie down, stroking her arm to soothe her. She drifts off, stirring restlessly, occasionally sighing out her phrase, tick tock. Tick tock, I agree softly. It's time for bed. Tick tock, go to sleep. The sun rises in the sky until it's directly over us. It must be noon, I think absently. Not that it matters. Across the water, off to the right, I see the enormous flash as the lightning bolt hits the tree and the electrical storm begins again. Right in the same area did last night. Someone must have moved into its range, triggered the attack. I sit for a while watching the lightning, keeping Wyrus calm, lulled into a sort of peacefulness by the lapping of the water. I think of last night, how the lightning began just after the bell tolled, 12 bongs. Tick-tock, Wyrus says, surfacing to consciousness for a moment and then going back under. 12 bongs last night, like it was midnight. Then lightning. The sun overhead now, like it's noon, and lightning. Slowly I rise up and survey the arena, the lightning there. In the next pie wedge over came the blood rain, where Joanna, Wyrus, and Beatty were caught. We would have been in the third section, right next to that when the fog appeared, and as soon as it was sucked away, the monkeys began to gather in the fourth. Tick-tock. My head snaps to the other side. A couple of hours ago, around 10, that wave came out of the second section to the left where the lightning strikes now. At noon, at midnight, at noon. Tick-tock, Wyrus says in her sleep, as the lightning ceases and the blood rain begins just to the right of it. Her words suddenly make sense. Oh, I say under my breath, tick-tock. My eyes sweep around the full circle of the arena, and I know she's right. Tick-tock, this is a clock. So with that being said, it is break time, and more stuff will happen when we come back, as it tends to do. Hello, we are back. So we pick up right where we left off. Katniss is looking around and realizes that Wyrus is right. The whole arena is set up like a clock with a new horror set in each section. Lightning, blood rain, fog, monkeys, and other stuff. Katniss wakes everyone up, realizing how close they are to the fog, and she explains Wyrus's clock theory. Everyone except Joanna is convinced. And Wyrus is finally happy that someone finally understood her. And then Katniss remembers the night of the party at the president's mansion during her victory tour when Plutarch showed her his watch and he said it starts at midnight, almost like he was giving her a clue about the arena. Probably because at the time, she was still going to be a mentor, but no time to think about that. They determined that the blood rain is at 1:30, and at 2 is when the poisonous fog begins. They gather their stuff and head to the cornucopia to get a better view of the clock theory and to go over the weapons again. And Joanna and Katniss continue to clash, I guess. Basically, Joanna wonders out loud why Beatty wants the coil of wire so badly, since he literally risked his life for it in the cornucopia. Peeta says it's because, it's the best weapon Beatty could have, since he won his games by electrocuting the other tributes, hence his nickname Volts. And Katniss calls Joanna out, so after all, wouldn't Joanna be able to piece that together? But us knowing what we know now, that there's, literally a whole plan in place to get Katniss and Peeta out of the arena, and Joanna's in on it. I don't know. I think Joanna's behavior in this moment makes a little more sense. I don't know. I think she's trying to deflect and not make the audience think about that, because I mean, the plan all along probably was for Beatty to use the wire and the lightning tree to destroy the force field around the arena, but we all know things don't exactly go according to plan. But anyway, Joanna deflects from Katniss, like calling her out by reminding Katniss that, she got Max killed. Nice, Joanna. Real nice. Anyway, as they make their way to the cornucopia, Katniss reflects on how different her position is now at this point in the games, versus the previous year, because last year she was still on her own, and now she's in a group with multiple fighters. And there's a good line on page 329 that says, "Yes, it's great to have allies, as long as you can ignore the thought that you'll have to kill them." Which is so dark, but true. And then Katniss's internal monologue is basically, well, Wyrus and Beatty will get killed off on their own. Joanna's pissing me off, so I'll have no problem killing her. And as for Finnick, well, let's just hope someone does it for me. These are really dark thoughts. Change topic. Imagine killing Snow. That's better. That's exactly how it's written in the book, I promise. I'm totally not being sarcastic, guys. You can look for yourselves. Anyway, they get to the cornucopia. Peeta sets Beatty down in the shade, and Beatty gives Wyrus his coil of wire to go clean in the water, a decision he will very soon regret. But for now, Wyrus is happily cleaning the wire and singing Hickory Dickory Dock, and Joanna just sighs and goes, "Not that song again. Please, not again." Which is what anyone in my car would say, because I keep playing Running Up That Hill on repeat. My mom once got sick of me playing multiple Taylor Swift songs in a row. She's never experienced that, though. She got off easy with the Taylor Swift. It could be so much worse with me, but anyway. The rest of the group talks about how the fog kicks in at 2, just like Wyrus predicted, and they praise her as a genius, as they should. Beatty even praises Wyrus for how intuitive she is by comparing her to a canary in the District 12 mines, sensing things before anyone else does. And to anyone wondering what a canary is, it's a bird that they send down into the mines because it can warn the miners of bad air when they stop singing. So basically, if the bird stops singing, get out. And if the air is real bad, it'll die. And then Katniss, has a slightly chaotic inner monologue. Continue. Take 2, Alyson. And then Katniss's slightly chaotic inner monologue continues. To sum it up, it's basically, oh no, dying songbirds makes me think of Rue and Maisley Donner and Gale down the mines where he could easily die. Nope, don't think of that. Imagine stabbing Snow. That's better. I think that's accurate. Anyway, Joanna finds a couple axes and looks the happiest Katniss has ever seen her, which a little scary when you remember how incredibly deadly she is with axes. Because, she's from 7 and has been wielding axes since she was a little kid. And here Katniss points out how there's another reason that the kids in District 12 are at a major disadvantage in the games typically, because they don't work in their industry until they're 18, which is good because, mines are dangerous and you don't want to send children down there. So that's the one good thing Ben M does, I guess. Not force children into mines. They're just, but they are comfortable letting them starve to death, so win some, you lose some, I guess. But if the kids went into the mines earlier, then they could go into the arena knowing how to blow things up and, being able to wield pickaxes. But, nothing in Pen M is ever fair, though. Anyway, while Katniss is going through the weapons, Peeta is drawing because it's what he does, but in all seriousness, this is useful drawing. He's making a map of the arena divided into 12 slices to, of course, represent the clock set up for the whole place. Good to have a visual and try to figure out what all the different dangers are and where not to be at certain times. And then, bam, something happens, which it's just a summary of the whole last third of the book. Because in the previous book, it felt like we were in the arena for a freaking long time. But now it's like one thing after the other. We can't keep up, which is probably how Katniss feels. So good writing, Suzanne. But anyway, Katniss realizes something's wrong because Iris has stopped singing, so she immediately loads an arrow, but by the time she turns around, Gloss has already slit Iris's throat and it's too late to save her. But Katniss still manages to shoot an arrow into Gloss's temple. Then, a second later, Joanna buries an axe into Cashmere's chest, and just like that, 2 careers are dead. Katniss is really good at killing tributes from one, I guess. Finnick saves Peeta from Brutus's spear, but takes a knife from Anabaria in the thigh. Katniss also notes that if it wasn't for the cornucopia providing them some cover, both Brutus and Anabaria would be dead. 3 cannons go off, and Katniss pursues the remaining career tributes, and then the whole island starts spinning. Because, just as they have the whole clock system figured out, game makers go, psych, we're going to change it up now. And nothing anyone can do now except hang on for dear life. When the spinning stops, Katniss sees that the dead bodies are gone. Peeta, Finnick, and Joanna have managed to hang on. Finnick has to go rescue Beetee. And to really drive home the fact how quickly everything just happened, Katniss estimates that the time between when Iris stopped singing to the island being done spinning was no more than a minute or 2. And as Finnick is rescuing Beetee, Katniss remembers his wire and how important it was to him, so she looks for it and realizes that Iris still has it. So before the hovercraft can take her body, Katniss has to swim out and get it, which just, I can't imagine having to do that. Getting something off the body of a friend who was alive just minutes ago. And all Katniss can really do for Iris in that moment is, close her eyes and quickly say goodbye to her, which is really sad because Iris deserves a good send-off like Rue. Also, this is like a small thing, but it's another instance of Katniss kind of working against the Capitol and not playing the games the way they want her to, because, the whole idea of the games is survival of the fittest, every man for themselves, that sort of thing. No room for compassion, because y'all have to kill each other in the end. But here, Katniss went out of her way to get the wire for Beetee, because she knows how much it means to him, and it'll be a small comfort to him after just losing his friend, and in the end it'll save them, because that coil of wire is how they'll be able to blow up the force field in the end. So good job, Katniss, once again doing something unexpected that ends up saving everyone. Well, almost everyone, but let's not get into that. Katniss rejoins the group at the cornucopia. Beetee at least still has his glasses, so that's a win, thank goodness. And another reason I would not win the Hunger Games, because I am blind without my contacts or glasses, guys. I would trip, lose my glasses, and just like that, I'd be done. I lost. Anyway, everyone's a bit somber. Katniss realizes that she's the only one who still has her district partner, which is so sad, especially because we all know that these victors are in on the plan to get out. They know going into the arena is a risk no matter what, but they at least have hope of getting out with their friend. So yeah, this sucks. Anyway, they get back to the beach. Beetee can at least walk now, and then there's this really kind of funny moment where Joanna sort of comforts Katniss. So it's on page, this moment's on page 236. We circle around the cornucopia, scrutinizing the jungle. It has a baffling uniformity. I remember the tall tree that took the first lightning strike at 12 o'clock, but every sector has a similar tree. Joanna thinks to follow Anabaria's and Brutus's tracks, but they have been blown or washed away. There's no way to tell where anything is. I should have never mentioned the clock, I say bitterly. Now they've taken that advantage away as well. Only temporarily, says Beetee. At 10 we'll see the wave again and be back on track. Yes, they can't redesign the whole arena, says Peeta. It doesn't matter, says Joanna impatiently. You had to tell us or we never would have moved our camp in the first place, brainless. Ironically, her logical, if demeaning reply is the only one that comforts me. Yes, I had to tell them to move. Come on, I need water. Anyone have a good gut feeling? Okay, so Finnick and Katniss go to the jungle where it'll be safe to get water, and I'm just going to read the last couple pages of the chapter. It's a bit long, but I couldn't figure out the best way to condense it, and I think Katniss's internal monologue here is important to note, and as usual, something happens at the end of the chapter. As I stand there, weapons ready, I can't lose the uneasy feeling that something is going on and that it has to do with Peeta. I retrace her steps, starting from the moment the gong rang out, searching for the source of my discomfort. Finnick towing Peeta off his metal plate, Finnick reviving Peeta after the force field stopped his heart. Mags running into the fog so that Finnick could carry Peeta, the Morphling hurling herself in front of him to block the monkey's attack. The fight with the careers was so quick, but didn't Finnick block Brutus's spear from hitting Peeta, even though it meant taking Anabaria's knife in his leg? And even now, Joanna has him drawing a map on a leaf rather than risking the jungle. There's no question about it. For reasons completely unfathomable to me, some of the other victors are trying to keep him alive, even if it means sacrificing themselves. I'm dumbfounded. For one thing, that's my job. For another, it doesn't make sense. Only one of us can get out, so why have they chosen Peeta to protect? What has Haymitch possibly said to them? What has he bargained with to make them put Peeta's life above their own? I know my own reasons for keeping Peeta alive. He's my friend, and this is my way to defy the capital, to subvert its terrible games. But if I had no real ties to him, what would make me want to save him, to choose him over myself? Surely he is brave, but we have all been brave enough to survive the games. There is that quality of goodness that's hard to overlook, but still. And then I think of it, what Peeta can do so much better than the rest of us. He can use words. He obliterated the rest of the field at both interviews, and maybe it's because of that underlying goodness that he can move a country to his side with the turn of a simple sentence. I remember thinking that was the gift the leader of our revolution should have. Has Haymitch convinced the others of this? That Peeta's tongue would have far greater power against the capital than any physical strength the rest of us could claim? I don't know. It seems like a really long leap for some of the tributes. I mean, we're talking about Joanna Mason here, but what other explanation can there be for their decided effort to keep him alive? Katniss, got the spile? Finnick asked, snapping me back to reality. I cut the vine that ties the spile to my belt and hold the metal tube out to him. That's when I hear the scream. So full of fear and pain it ices my blood, and so familiar. I drop the spile, forget where I am or what lies ahead, only know that I must reach her, protect her. I run wildly in the direction of the voice, heedless of danger, ripping through the vines and branches, through anything that keeps me from reaching her, from reaching my little sister. Dun dun dun! Okay, not gonna lie, the first time I read this book, I remember sprinting to the next chapter so fast, cause like, what? But we're not gonna do that right now, cause it's time for a break. And we're back. So we pick up right where we left off. Katniss hears Prim screaming for help and naturally freaks out, as anyone would. And it's especially terrifying for Katniss because her whole main motivation from the beginning of the series is keeping her little sister safe. Her volunteering to take Prim's place is what kickstarted this whole thing after all. So, finding Prim in the arena would be like the worst case ever. So Katniss starts screaming Prim's name and chasing the sound of her voice. She runs into a clearing and can hear Prim's voice coming from above her, and it's around this time Katniss realizes that the sound isn't coming from Prim herself, but from a Jabberjay. Surprise! They're back. Thought they went extinct, but we know from Ballad that some were collected and kept in Gaul's lab, and clearly saved the information, so, you could resurrect the birds at any time, like they're doing now. And Katniss even notes, like, how unmutt-like the Jabberjays look, which, is the point, since the Jabberjays were originally created to spy on the rebels back in the dark days. Katniss calms down, reminds herself that it's not real, just like the mutts from the previous year, just a trick of the game makers. By the way, I know Plutarch, you had to sell that you were a genius head game maker, but Jesus Christ, this is cruel. Then again, probably did this to remind everyone just how sadistic Snow and the Capitol are or something, but anyway, Katniss calms down just as Finnick catches up with her. And just as she's about to explain the Jabberjays to him, another voice starts crying out. This time, it's a young woman's voice, and clearly meant for Finnick based on the way he reacts, and he runs off immediately. And so Katniss has no choice but to follow him. Finnick is fast, and the bird is about a quarter mile away, so it does take Katniss a minute to catch up. So by the time she does, Finnick is circling the trunk of a large tree, calling out for someone named Annie. Katniss finds the Jabberjay, shoots it, and it lands at Finnick's feet, and, he realizes what's been going on. Katniss assures him that it wasn't real, that it wasn't Annie, but Finnick isn't reassured because, as he reminds Katniss and us, Jabberjays copy sounds that they hear, so how did they get the sounds of Prim and Annie screaming like that? So yeah, that's not good. And just as Katniss is beginning to process this, she hears Gale's voice, and Finnick has to remind her that it's not actually him, and they gotta get out of there, and the whole thing is just horrifying. It's summed up perfectly on page 343. I stop fighting Finnick, though, and like the night in the fog, I flee what I can't fight. What can only do me harm. Only this time, it's my heart and not my body that's disintegrating. This must be another weapon of the clock. 4 o'clock, I guess. When the hands tick-tock onto the floor, the monkeys go home and the Jabberjays come out to play. Finnick is right. Getting out of here is the only thing to do. Although there will be nothing Haymitch can send in a parachute that will help either Finnick or me recover from the wounds the birds have inflicted. I catch sight of Peeta and Joanna standing at the tree line, and I'm filled with a mixture of relief and anger. Why didn't Peeta come to help me? Why did no one come after us? Even now he hangs back with his hands raised, palms toward us, lips moving but no words reach us. Why? The wall is so transparent. Finnick and I run smack into it and bounce back onto the jungle floor. I'm lucky. My shoulder took the worst of the impact, whereas Finnick hit face first, and now his nose is gushing blood. This is why Peeta and Joanna and even Beatty, who I see sadly shaking his head behind them, have not come to our aid. An invisible barrier blocks the area in front of us. It's not a force field. You can touch the hard, smooth surface all you like, but Peeta's knife and Joanna's axe can't make a dent in it. I know without checking more than a few feet to one side that it encloses the entire 4 to 5 o'clock wedge, that we will be trapped like rats until the hour passes. Peeta presses his hand against the surface, and I put my own up to meet it, as if I can feel him through the wall. I see his lips moving, but I can't hear him. Can't hear anything outside our wedge. I try to make out what he's saying, but I can't focus, so I just stare at his face, doing my best to hang on to my sanity. So yeah, yikes. Finnick and Katniss are just stuck there till the hour's up, and it sucks. They're stuck listening to the sounds of their loved ones screaming in pain, and Katniss can't even hear Peeta on the other side, who is clearly trying to comfort her. Finnick gives up almost immediately. He crouches down on the ground with his hand over his ears, just trying to block it all out. Katniss shoots the birds until she's out of arrows, but more just keep coming. And soon she just has to sit there and wait for the hour to be over. We don't know if Finnick hears any voices other than Annie's, though Katniss hears Prim, Gale, her mother, Madge, and all of Gale's family. When it's finally over, Peeta picks up Katniss and holds her until she finally relaxes, though Katniss is 100% convinced that Prim is being tortured. But Peeta assures her that Prim is okay, that it really was just a trick, because Peeta reminds us that they're almost down to the final 8 in the games, because When they get to the final 8, they interview everyone's friends and family back home. And, how can they interview Prim if she's dead? Especially now, since the public loves Prim so much, as well as Katniss's cousins. Be suspicious if they weren't there. And Beetee confirms that her family's okay, since it's very easy to scramble recorded voices to make sounds like those, because kids in District 3 learn how to do it, and it's just a trick to rattle Katniss and Finnick. And Joanna has the best response to this. It's on page 346. So Joanna says, "Of course Peeta's right. The whole country adores Katniss's little sister. If they really killed her like this, they probably have an uprising on their hands," says Joanna flatly. "Don't want that, do they?" She throws back her head and shouts, "Whole country in rebellion! Wouldn't want anything like that!" My mouth drops open in shock. No one ever says anything like this in the games. Absolutely, they've cut away from Joanna, are editing her out. But I have heard her, and can never think about her again in the same way. She'll never win any awards for kindness, but she certainly is gutsy. Or crazy. She picks up some shells and heads toward the jungle. "I'm getting water," she says. I can't help catching her hand as she passes me. "Don't go in there. I remember the birds must be gone, but I still don't want anyone in there. Not even her. They can't hurt me. I'm not like the rest of you." "There's no one left I love," Joanna says, and frees her hand with an impatient shake. Again, why is no one in this series allowed to be happy? Anyway, Joanna goes to collect the water. Finnick sits in the ocean water while Beetee fiddles with his wire, leaving Katniss and Peeta to chat. Peeta asks who they used against Finnick and figures it must be Annie Cresta, the girl Max volunteered for, who won 5 years ago, which was the same year Katniss's father died, so she wasn't really paying close attention to the games that year. But we learned from Peeta that was the year the games ended with an earthquake that broke the dam that flooded that arena. And Annie was the only one left who could swim, so she won. Though by that point she had already lost her mind after watching her district partner get beheaded. And she hasn't really been seen in public much since, because, yeah, she's extremely traumatized. Anyway, then a cannon goes off and they see a hovercraft pick up another body, but they don't know who it is, though they'll soon find out. They show the faces of all the fallen that night. They see Cashmere, Gloss, Wirus, Mags, the woman from 5, the Morphling from 6, Blight, and the man from 10. So 16 victors already dead. The game makers really want the unpopular games to end quickly, I guess. And, well, game makers, but mostly Snow, probably. So far of this group, the Careers and Shaft are still alive. He's still off doing his own thing. Then they get a parachute, which is bred from District 3. And Finnick once again is counting it, which still confuses Katniss. And when they divide them, Joanna once again has the best response. She says, let's each have 3, and whoever's still alive at breakfast can take a vote on the rest." It's okay to laugh, guys. Katniss is laughing too. Anyway, they set up camp on the beach after the wave. Peeta and Katniss take first watch since they're the most rested and they want some time alone. And once again, there's no way for me to condense the last few pages, and it's also one of the best Everlark scenes, so I have to read it. That's just the way it works, guys. So it starts with Peeta saying, "Katniss," he says softly, "it's no use pretending we don't know what the other one is trying to do. No, I guess there isn't, but it's no fun discussing it either. Well, not for us anyway. The Capitol viewers will be glued to their sets so they don't miss one wretched word. I don't know what kind of deal you think you've made with Haymitch, but you should know he made me promises as well. Of course I know this too. He told Peeta they'd keep me alive so that he wouldn't be suspicious. So I think we can assume he was lying to one of us. This gets my attention. A double deal, a double promise. with only Hamish knowing which one is real. I raise my head. Peeta meets my eyes. Why are you saying this now? Because I don't want you forgetting how different our circumstances are. If you die and I live, there's there's no life for me at all back in District 12. You're my whole life, he says. I would never be happy again. I start to object, but he puts a finger to my lips. It's different for you. I'm not saying it wouldn't be hard, but there are other people who'd make your life worth living. Peeta pulls the chain with the gold disc from around his neck. He holds it in the moonlight so I can clearly see the mockingjay. Then his thumb slides along the catch. I didn't notice before, and the disc popped open. It's not solid, as I thought, but a locket. And within the locket are photos. On the right side, my mother and Prim laughing, and on the left, Gale, actually smiling. There is nothing in the world that could break me faster at this moment than these three faces. After what I heard this afternoon, it is the perfect weapon. Your family needs you, Katniss, Peeta says. My family. My mother, my sister, and my pretend cousin, Gale. But Peeta's intention is clear. That Gale really is my family. Or will be one day if I live. That I'll marry him. So Peeta's giving me his life and Gale at the same time. To let me know I shouldn't ever have doubts about it. Everything. That's what Peeta wants me to take from him. I wait for him to mention the baby, to play to the cameras, but he doesn't. And that's how I know that none of this is part of the games, that he's telling me the truth about what he feels. No one really needs me, he says, and there's no self-pity in his voice. It's true his family doesn't need him. They will mourn him, as will a handful of friends, but they will get on. Even Hamish, with the help of a lot of white liquor, will get on. I realize that only one person will be damaged beyond repair if Peeta dies. Me. I do, I say. I need you. He looks upset, takes a deep breath as if to begin a long argument, and that's no good. No good at all, because he'll start going on about Prim and my mother and everything, and I'll just get confused. So before he can talk, I stop his lips with a kiss. I feel that thing again, the thing I only felt once before in the cave last year, when I was trying to get Hamish to send us food. I kissed Peeta about 1,000 times during those games and after, but there was only one kiss that made me feel something stir deep inside. Only one that made me want more. But my head wound started bleeding and he made me lie down. This time there's nothing but us to interrupt us, and after a few attempts, Peeta gives up on talking. The sensation inside me grows warmer and spreads out from my chest, down through my body, out along my arms and legs, to the tips of my being. Instead of satisfying me, the kisses have the opposite effect of making my need greater. I thought I was something of an expert on hunger, but this is an entirely new kind. It's the first crack of the lightning storm, the bolt hitting the tree at midnight, that brings us to our senses. It rouses Finnick as well. He sits up with a sharp cry. I see his fingers digging into the sand as he reassures himself that whatever nightmare he inhabited wasn't real. I can't sleep any more, he says. One of you should rest. Only then does he seem to notice our expressions, the way we were wrapped around each other. Or both of you. I can watch alone. Peeta won't let him, though. It's too dangerous, he says. I'm not tired. You lie down, Katniss. I don't object because I do need to sleep if I'm to be of any use keeping him alive. I let him lead me over to where the others are. He puts the chain with the locket around my neck, then rests his hand over to the spot where our baby would be. You're going to make a great mother, you know, he says. He kisses me one last time and goes back to Finnick. His reference to the baby signals that our time out from the games is over, that he knows the audience will be wondering why he hasn't used the most persuasive argument in his arsenal, that sponsors must be manipulated. But as I stretch out on the sand, I wonder, could it be more? Like a reminder to me that I could still one day have kids with Gale? Well, if that was it, it was a mistake. Because for one thing, that's never been my part of the plan. And for another, if one of us can be a parent, anyone can see it should be PETA. As I drift off, I try to imagine that world, somewhere in the future with no games, no capital, a place like the meadow in the song I sang to Rue as she died, where PETA's child could be safe. I mean, she's not wrong. That future will be a thing one day. PETA's child will have a good future, but you're gonna be this child mom, Katniss, anyway. Okay, that's the end of this chapter. That's the end of this episode. It was a bit of a long reading. My mouth is very dry. I need to chug a lot of water after this. Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. Next time will be the end of Catching Fire, the book. Okay. How do I wrap up the episodes, guys? I don't know anymore. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube channel in the show notes. If you're on YouTube listening to this, like and subscribe, leave reviews, all that good stuff. It helps boost the algorithms, and so more lovely people like yourselves can find this podcast. Yeah, that's all I got. I don't know. I'm tired, guys. I need to go to bed, but I also need to edit this episode, so wish me luck. But in all seriousness, thank you so much for listening, guys. I really do appreciate this. I love making this podcast, so I hope y'all have a great day/night, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!